resources on, oh, sorry, it's recording now. And Annie, I don't know if you want to mute yourself just because there's a little bit of an echo for me. And then I'll give you a few different resources on how you might be able to integrate this within your own life. So generally, I like to start with the idea of what is mindlessness, because ironically, that's something that we're more familiar with in our everyday life. And so the idea of mindlessness is this autopilot that disrupts our present moment awareness. And this is very familiar. And what that means is that, we're going throughout our lives. A lot of the times we're kind of locked into our heads and we're kind of going from A to B, planning everything out. And a lot of times it's very hard to be aware of what's actually happening in this present moment. There was a research study at Harvard with Killingsworth and Gilbert, and they did a study, and it was called "A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind." And what they discovered was quite alarming. They discovered that 47% of our waking hours, people's waking hours, were thinking about something other than what we're doing in that given moment. But the more alarming part of that study was that that was linked to unhappiness. So people self-reported and said that they felt unhappy when their mind was constantly wandering. Now, it's not to say that mind wandering is bad all the time, but if you're in a constant state of autopilot or mind wandering, it can kind of taint the present experience. And so, there were some statistics, this is from a little while ago, but, in 2015, our attention span was 8.25 seconds, and that is less than 2000, which was 12 seconds. And that's actually less than a goldfish. So a goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. And in 2015, 8.25, we can presume that it's actually less than that now. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of painting a picture of where we're at as a culture and kind of a global mindset. So what we know is that there's this connection between where we place our attention and that quality of attention, as well as our overall happiness. And so what I discovered through my experience and how my introduction into mindfulness, before I even knew what mindfulness was that there was this causeless happiness when you are in the now. And, just as a little bit of a personal story is about 15 years ago, when I was in kind of emerging adulthood, I experienced debilitating anxiety, and so much so that I couldn't leave my home for 2 years. It was called agoraphobia, and I was essentially afraid of being afraid of being afraid. And I couldn't do everyday tasks, I couldn't socialize, I couldn't do much of anything. And so for about 5 years, I spent most of my waking hours trying to retrain my brain. And it was a very repetitive act. What I did was I basically placed my attention on what was going on in this given moment. So whether I was eating, I was just eating. Whether I was walking, I was just walking. And I did that over and over and over again. And what I recognized is that it didn't really matter what I was doing, but when I was completely present and anchored in this moment, that there was what I call this causeless happiness, that no external force made me feel this way. It just was this natural state of being at rest. So, we don't have a lot of time. Normally I open a discussion, but I would just invite you to think about a time when you felt fully present and this sense of aliveness. And to really think about what you were doing in that moment. And for a lot of people, there are different activities, right? So some people it's sports, other people it's art making, some people it's playing with their dog or their child. Other people it's just doing a hobby that they really enjoy. There are some people that feel totally immersed into the work they do. So even their work activities can get that in that state. But what I'm pitching here is that feeling that you feel in that moment, that sense of aliveness, is available to you at absolutely any moment. And that you don't need to necessarily rely upon an activity to get into that state, that you can cultivate that feeling sense here right now. And it doesn't even matter if you have a headache. It doesn't matter if you're feeling good, if you're not feeling good. It's this presence that's always available. And so there's a common image here that illustrates mindfulness. Is your mind full? Meaning, is it you have a lot of mind activity? Or are you mindful? And you think about animals, and when an animal's outside, it's just walking. It's just being outside. But, for the human mind, sometimes it goes into rumination mode, thinking in circles, perseverating, which is thinking also in circles, whether it's about the future or the past. And really, if you start to examine your mind and really look closely at where your thoughts are, a lot of the time they're housed in the past, or they're projecting towards the future. And for some people, that is kind of, a little bit of this low-grade anxiety, or this worrisome about the future, or this constant feeling that you need to plan and predict everything. If you're more in the past, it's a lot of worrying about what you could have done differently or what went wrong. But the idea here is we don't want to sandwich the present in between the past and the future. We really want to kind of hone that experience of being fully present. So we think about children and this, they are just pure experience. I mean, particularly young children, right? And what that means is mindfulness is not about making you a nice person, a perfect person, a purified person. I mean, maybe that's an outcome for some people. It just means that, you are feeling what you feel. And so when a child, let's say you take a toy away from a child, that could agitate the child, and then there might be rage, but then the rage is over, and then it's playing, and then it's eating, and then it's napping. And, a lot of times in the more mature mind, what happens is we start to think in circles, and we start to think like, if I'm mad, why did that person make me mad? Why did that person cut me off in traffic? How dare they do that? Why is my day going wrong? So we really want to be aware of where we're placing our attention, and think about, kind of get inspired by how children live so fully in this moment. So there's kind of a saying that I like to say. Well, first of all, there's this idea, this low-grade feeling that there's something better than this moment. That is kind of a very ubiquitous belief I've discovered over the years, that even if, everything feels good, that maybe there's something better. This can come up in your career. This can come up even just in your everyday life. Like, after I finish this summit, I get to eat, I get to feel, maybe get to go for a nap. I'm a little bit tired, that there's this constant feeling of something's better. So what I say is that there's this forward moving energy, and it's just a habit. It's not a truth. It's not like you have to live in this forward moving energy at all times. And for someone like me who has practiced mindfulness over and over, I don't actually feel like I'm practicing mindfulness. It's just part of my everyday existence now. I'm just able to kind of anchor my attention. So what I would say is, imagine that you couldn't even imagine a better moment. That whatever's going on right now is as good as it gets. No better, no worse. It's just this. And this is as good as it gets. And you can meditate on that. You could even use that as a mantra and think about, imagine if I couldn't imagine a better moment. And for some people, there's ease in that saying, like, oh, that feels like a relief. I like this little illustration here. What day is it? Asked Pooh. It's today, squeaked Piglet. Ah, my favorite day, said Pooh. But, it's so kind of humorous because, is it ever our favorite day? Because, we're always planning for a better moment. So the question is, what is mindfulness? Because I'm kind of describing where we're at as a culture, some of the ubiquitous thoughts and feelings and beliefs. So I try to break it into the most digestible form. And so this is a really simple way of looking at it. It's basically the act of noticing what's going on in the present moment. And when I say act, it's not this theory of what we should be doing. It's actually the physical act of noticing. So for some people, that is literally pausing and witnessing, whether it's a body sensation, sounds around them. And we'll get a chance to practice, hopefully. So I'll kind of give you a more clear glimpse into that. If you want to simplify it more, it's the act of noticing, but this added condition of non-judgmentally. And what that means is that when you're noticing things in this present experience, that you're not critiquing that. You're not saying, oh, that's good, that's bad, that's right, that's wrong, that's this, that's that. It's just noticing. It's a very neutral experience. Now, you might not necessarily have neutral experiences in the body, and that's okay. And you can notice those sensations for what they are. So I'd like to just take a moment and just pause. And I'd like you just to kind of pay attention to what's going in your body and place your attention on something that we do all day long that we never really witness, which is your breathing. And don't change your breathing. Just notice it. Is it shallow? Is it deep? And noticing where the air goes in. Does it go in through the mouth? Does it go through the nose? In, down. Noticing the belly expand. Paying attention to what's going on in the body. So this is what they call interoceptive awareness, which is awareness of what's going on in the body. And the body is very wise. It actually reveals a lot to us if we start to pay attention to what's going on in the body. And when we think about the sky and we think about clouds in the sky, think about your thoughts as clouds. And that you are not your thoughts, because the sky is not clouds. The sky is the sky. That you are actually this vast, open, boundless awareness, which is the sky, and that the clouds, those thoughts, are coming and going, and they change and they shift and they move. But so much of our belief system is that we are a thought, that a thought is angry, that I am angry. But that thought can come and go. If you don't cling on to it, they say on research literature, if you don't cling on to a thought, it takes about 90 seconds to dissipate even a sensation in the body if you don't let it kind of cycle into itself. So I'd like to try this once again, and we're gonna spend about five minutes doing a little exercise. So it's similar to what I just did, and I'm gonna play a recording, and you're just gonna pay attention. And there'll be a little bell at the end, and I'll do this with you. And at the end, you'll just bring your attention back to me.
So find a relaxed, comfortable position, seated on a chair or on the floor, on a cushion. Keep your back upright, but not too tight. Hands resting wherever they're comfortable. Tongue on the roof of your mouth or wherever it's comfortable. And you can notice your body from the inside, noticing the shape of your body, the weight, touch. And let yourself relax and become curious about your body seated here, the sensations of your body, the touch, the connection with the floor or the chair. Relax any areas of tightness or tension. Just breathe, soften. And now begin to tune into your breath in your body. Feeling the natural flow of breath. Don't need to do anything to your breath. Not long, not short, just natural. And notice where you feel your breath in your body. It might be in your abdomen. It may be in your chest or throat or in your nostrils. See if you can feel the sensations of breath, one breath at a time. When one breath ends, the next breath begins. Now, as you do this, you might notice that your mind may start to wander. You might start thinking about other things. If this happens, this is not a problem. It's very natural. Just notice that your mind has wandered. You can say thinking or wandering in your head softly. And then gently redirect your attention right back to the breathing. So we'll stay with this for some time in silence, just a short time. Noticing our breath, from time to time getting lost in thought and returning to our breath. See if you can be really kind to yourself in the process. And once again, you can notice your body, your whole body seated here. Let yourself relax even more deeply. And then offer yourself some appreciation for doing this practice today. Whatever that means to you. Finding a sense of ease and well-being for yourself in this day.
So if your eyes are shut, like mine were, you can open them up. Just take a minute to make sense of all the light around you. You might feel a little bit sensitive. Some people may feel actually very sleepy while they're doing that because they might not be used to this kind of practice. So their physiological response is to shut down, is to sleep. And that's okay, that can happen. I would say with this kind of practice, there's a level of alertness that we want in order to really pay attention, but you can start to feel relaxed. That could be an outcome. So I hope that was nice to test that out with me. And that was just 5 minutes that we did that. And sometimes that's all you need is just 5 minutes. So the question is how do we do this? How do we actually build this into our life? So from a high level point of view, there are two types of practices. There are formal practices. So you can do a daily sitting meditation. You can search guided meditation in YouTube. There's an app called Headspace that has guided meditations, and you can sit for 5, 10, 15 minutes in the day, whether it's the morning or evening. And that can be a very formal practice. It can be almost like a ritual. Now, the thing is, we don't want to stop there. We want to include it throughout our day. So informal practices is where we try it when we're doing any other thing. So that could be when we're walking, when we're washing the dishes, when we're listening, when we're touching, when we're smelling, when we're eating. And for example, when washing the dishes, really pay attention to that experience. You know, what does it feel like to hear the sound of the water, to touch the soap, to hear the clinking of the dishes, to smell the soap come up, to really engage with that experience with a quality of attention that isn't all in our head, like, oh, you know, when will I finish this? When is this going to be done? Why didn't my kids do this? Let's kind of take away from that heady experience and go back into the body. So you want to find yourself mindfulness moments throughout the day so that they can be reminders. So for me, it is about washing the dishes and eating primarily. Eating is a big one. I think so many of us, we're so used to eating and talking with somebody or watching YouTube or turning on the television, but pay attention to what it really is like to sit and be with a meal, a beautiful meal that you've probably spent a lot of time preparing. So, we've already kind of talked about why should we do this. There's a whole host of reasons. Ellen Langer, she's the kind of one of the first female psychologist professors at Harvard, and she did a study that had all these different benefits: increasing competence, memory, positive affect, whatnot. I mean, stress reduction is a big one. And companies are starting to recognize this, right? They're starting to say, hey, how can we bring this into the workplace environment? In this article, Why Companies Are Promoting Mindfulness at the Office, it says, the pace of our workdays and our reliance on the always on culture has made mindfulness more needed than ever before. All mindfulness is doing is trying to get us more attuned to the thoughts, emotions, and sensations that we're experiencing. It's really been in the last 5 or so years that companies led by General Mills, Aetna, Google have really started to take mindfulness programs and scale them into a lasting, enduring way. So there are companies like Google who actually have mindfulness workshops throughout I don't know if it's throughout the month or the week, but they have them as part of their kind of workplace professionalism in services. Even police officers. Claudia said earlier, people in the military, police officers are doing this now because, we all need a place of stillness, even the people in the most high stressful jobs. Because what mindfulness does is it gives us the courage to look towards discomfort rather than away from it. Because what happens is when you start to try to move away from discomfort, whether it's physical discomfort, emotional discomfort, resistance can lead to persistence, and it can actually perpetuate those negative emotions, presumably are negative emotions. So, as professionals, we can incorporate it in different ways. So we want to be able to take mindful breaths throughout the day. And what we can do is, again, have mindfulness moments. Now, there is an app called Mynah, M-Y-N-A-H. I think they might have a $1 fee now, but there's probably other ones. And it's just a little bell, and I set it for every half an hour. And whenever it goes off, I remember, hey, I should take one mindful breath. And that mindful breath can do miraculous things, especially when we're sitting in front of a computer for so long and hunched in a certain way and very contracted. It kind of allows us to kind of pause and really just acknowledge that, taking that mindful breath and kind of acknowledging what's going on around us. Also, we're so used to this idea of that, we should be multitasking because we can get more done. But, research shows that our productivity actually goes down by 40% when we try to multitask. So what we need to do is practice single tasking on the job, which is trying to do one thing at a time rather than too many things. And that's another way to actually practice mindfulness. Another thing is, this is something that I find is pervasive, is that a lot of the time our mind is wandering when we're listening to somebody. Because what happens is we start to rehearse what we're going to say, or we start to critique what they're going to say, whether we say, oh, what they're saying makes sense to me, whether it doesn't, whether I agree, whether I disagree. But really watch your mind when you're listening and start to pay attention if you are paying attention. There's this idea of compassionate listening or deep compassionate listening or deep listening, where we just fully listen to somebody else without any judgment. Whether we agree with it or not is irrelevant. It's just listening, whether it is our colleagues, stakeholders, whoever we're engaging with in the workplace. So varying our stimuli. So sometimes what we need to do to pay attention is to switch some of the things that are going on. So if you're trying to single task, but you're doing it for too long, it's okay then to take a break and try something else. It's actually not a bad thing. It's called mindful learning. Ellen Langer coined that term, is mindful learning, and that we need to vary stimuli in order to pay attention. And it's funny, we talk to children, we always say, pay attention, but they can't. People can't pay attention if they're trying to focus on one thing for too long. Even in that mindfulness meditation, she was asking you to shift your attention from your body to sounds to other parts of your experience. And that's okay. That's different than multitasking when you're trying to do two things simultaneously. And also try to practice mindfulness while you're engaging or before you're engaging in a problem-solving activity. Because when you kind of quiet the mind, there's room for things to surface. And I did a whole master's thesis on this, and I got amazing results from the participants that said that so much creative insight bubbled up when there was room for it. I'm just going to skip over that just because, you know, we are running out of time. If you are interested in you know, creativity and mindfulness, you can practice free writing, even if you're doing technical writing in your job. Before technical writing, just free write, which is just write a stream of consciousness. And that can be very liberating. It can also help kind of alleviate some of the pressure that you have to do when you're trying to write. And that can be kind of a meditative state. You know, mind mapping, where you have a central theme and you create a spray of associations, is another way of generating creativity in kind of a mindful way.
By the way, just a reminder, Justin, we will reopen this room when it is closed to let you continue. So yeah.
Yes, yeah, we have 2 minutes. I'm kind of on the couple last slides here. Unfortunately, since we started, unfortunately, since we started late, there won't be a lot of time for Q&As. But I'll try to kind of come to the end of the presentation.
Okay,
yeah, so another thing is that Jon Kabat-Zinn, who secularized mindfulness.
Justin,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just wanted to let you know that we're actually going to reopen the room. So you're going to have an extra 10 minutes when these ones close. We're going to reopen them and people are going to get bumped into here.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so don't feel like you have to rush.
Okay, sounds good. I'll leave 10 minutes for the Q&A.
Okay.
So, you know, how do we incorporate it in other ways? So his name is Jon Kabat-Zinn. He secularized mindfulness about 30 years ago. People who had cancer, where he recognized that their pain was different than their suffering, that they could experience physical pain, but they didn't need to suffer. And so he kind of started to do research on this. And he was a scientist, he's a medical doctor, he's a professor, and he started to bring in these different attitudes, mindfulness attitudes, into people's awareness, like that if they practice gratitude, if they practice non-striving and letting go, that was another way of kind of bringing us back to the present moment. And so what I would encourage you, he has a whole series on YouTube. If you search 9 Attitudes, Jon Kabat-Zinn, he talks about each one for about 3 minutes. And some of them resonate more than others for me, but I think they're beautiful. I think if we all lived our lives embracing and fostering these attitudes, we would live a whole different existence as a culture. So you might get kicked out soon. So I'm just going to pause here and just say we're going to come back and I'll show you these resources that you can look into on your own. But there are apps and there are different websites that are going to be helpful for you.
By the way, we also have 1 minute countdown. So yeah, thank you. So
yeah, I think. Oh, because they're gonna come back in a minute.
Yeah, yeah. This is just a 1 minute countdown to make sure the attendees have any last minute questions, so we can ask.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I'm just going to do one additional thing here. So I'm going to mention, so Headspace used to be a free app, and it has all these cute little animations that help explain mindfulness, and it's actually good for children as well. You could do it as a family if you have a family. But they do let you do 10 free guided meditations, and I would test it out. Beyond that, I think there's a fee now, unfortunately, but the Mina app is the one with the little mindfulness bell that I use regularly. And then Insight Timer is an app that has a whole, and they have a whole page dedicated to free meditations. And so even if you search UCLA mindfulness awareness guided meditations, you're going to get a bunch. And I like them because some of them are very short, like 5, 7, 8 minutes. And those are better for probably people who are new to this and that maybe just want a taste of it to start. There are programs where they encourage participants to do up to like 45 minutes of mindfulness meditation, which is, I would say, very advanced. You can work up to that. I don't think that's something you would do off the get-go. So we are nearing the end. I have my own website. Some people like to just connect with me if they have questions. At the bottom of my website, there's a contact you can just contact me. I used to do mindfulness training, like one-on-one with people. I don't do that as much anymore, but if it's something that's really interesting to you, then, we could talk about that. I do more career coaching, but you can just contact me through there, or my email is actually contact@lifedesignbyjustin.com. And otherwise, why don't we open it up if there's any questions here? I think we have like 7 minutes or 8 minutes here.
We have 7 minutes, about more than 7 minutes here. So thank you, Justin. It's a very amazing presentation, I have to say that. I used to hear meditation, and as you said, each time I felt very sleepy. I thought I did it wrong. But when you said it's common, I feel more relieved. Also, I send a link to Justin's website in the chat box. If you want, just go there and check. So yeah, currently we have no question in the chat box. So if you have question, or if you feeling comfortable, you can just unmute yourself and just tap with Justin, ask your question. So there's no question. I have one question for Justin. Is that okay? Okay. Oh, wait, we got one. So do you have any advice for what to do when you feel overwhelmed at work?
At work. Okay. So, I mean, I could talk from the career coach point of view, but I probably should stick to the mindfulness meditation point of view. If we're talking about mindfulness meditation, I think what a lot of people do is they push down feelings that are uncomfortable or just kind of like disregard them. I think when we are feeling overwhelmed, that is your signal. That is the most amazing thing you could have, because it's telling you, wow, I need to really pause and kind of acknowledge what's going on in my body. And so, I mean, it goes back to maybe just taking a time out for 5 minutes and doing a simple breathing mindfulness exercise. And, if you are feeling very constrained and kind of rigid inside and a lot of discomfort, the idea with mindfulness is not to say, oh, I need to practice in order to get rid of it, because then you're going to create more stress because there's that pressure to get rid of it. It's just to start to notice it. If you really pay attention to a feeling, let's say the feeling of overwhelm or anger or sadness, it is literally an amorphous sensation in the body. You can notice for different people, or you can't notice different people, but you can notice in yourself that it might register in your chest or your stomach, but that will change. If you watch it, overwhelm will actually dissipate. It loses potency when we don't move away from it. When we start to just acknowledge it and say, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and we just start to watch it in the body, it doesn't have so much of an intensity. Now, from the career coach point of view, there may be other practical things we need to talk about, like how to delegate and whatever, but this is more on mindfulness.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, we have another question. So I have noticed an increase in incorporating mindfulness into pain management in general. So do you happen to know any studies on how effectively using these techniques to compare standard treatments?
Well, I think this is where you would want to search. His name is John, Jon. His last name is Cabot, Kabat-Zinn. Zinn. And all his research is on at the beginning 30 years ago, and even recently, he still talks about it, is pain management and mindfulness. And he talks about people with cancer that had extreme pain, and that they kind of call it the double arrow, like in wisdom traditions, that if you were shot with an arrow, there's the first arrow. Let's say if you stub your toe, that's the first arrow. It's like, ow, that really hurts. And then the second arrow is that thought stream that says, oh, why was that? Why did that stub my toe? Who put that chair there? Why did they do that? Everything goes wrong in my life. That's where the suffering lies, is in the narrative. So what he's suggesting is that the pain may still exist, but the suffering does not have to exist. That ongoing dialogue that seems to perpetuate the pain. So, and I can say, as someone who has dealt with chronic illness in my own life, that mindfulness was the saving grace for me, because sometimes you cannot get rid of physical pain, but you can just become kind of more accepting of your body. Yeah, so maybe we'll leave that one at that.
Oh, that's a very great answer. I Yeah, I heard someone tell me like something existed as long as you try to accept that thing. I mean, something related to yourself, you try to accept that, then you will feel less painful when you notice that once again. We
Yes.
also got a question about migraine. Do you have any suggestion about migraine, how to control it? Like, yeah, the pain on your head.
But remember, the word control might not be the right word, because anytime we're trying to control something, it makes it worse, because what you're saying is, I don't want this experience. Mindfulness is saying it is what it is. It is a migraine. Now, there may be a point by which the migraine is just literally too debilitating to do any type of exercise or mindfulness meditation, and we may just need to take rest. Mindfulness isn't the magic pill that cures everything. There still is medicine. There still is other techniques that can help with pain mitigation. But what I can say is that you should practice mindfulness when you don't have a headache, because what happens, and this is what happened to me at the beginning years ago, is I would only practice when I was anxious or uncomfortable. And then I conditioned myself to feel anxious while I was meditating, because that's the only time I would do it. But we want to meditate when we're feeling good. We want to meditate when we don't want to meditate. You want to get into a routine so that it does help accept kind of the everyday experience, irrespective if you have a migraine or don't have a migraine. But I can say that sometimes pain can be just too debilitating, and I understand that. So
that's very great. Yeah, we only have 1.5 minutes left. I assume the last question. So how do you think we can do to reduce the negative perceptions on meditation? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it would have to, this would require a more ongoing dialogue of like, what are those negative perceptions? Some people have negative perceptions because they link it to religion, but we're talking about presence, which is a gift of life. You don't need to have a religion to be present, right? Other people have negative perceptions because it didn't work for them. Like maybe it just didn't work. But there are other types of meditation. So mindfulness is one type. You might want to try like mantra meditations. There's transcendental meditation. There's visualizations. Sometimes it's not just about clinging onto one thing. It's about kind of do it your own. So I kind of, for example, like I was always told you have to sit when you meditate. But when I was not feeling well, I needed to lay down. And that was my way of meditating. So you just kind of make it your own and make it work. If it's not working for you, then, maybe it's just not for you, and that's okay as well.
Okay, wow, that's really great. It's like just to try to find the best way to do the meditation for yourself. Everyone have their unique way to do that. That's really great. So I think that will be the last question. So some people felt it's not easy to start meditation. Like I can't do it more than 2 minutes. Do you have any suggestion for that?
Well, it's like exercise. You can't expect to just lift a bunch of weights off the get-go, right? And it's same thing. What happens with mindfulness is a lot of people it's like if you try to do one sit-up and hope for the best, it's not going to do anything, right? They do it once or they think about meditation, but you have to build it into your life. And you start with 2 minutes and you do it every single day for 2 weeks. And then the next 2 weeks, you add on a minute. And over time, if you really love it, you will learn to kind of want to do more of it. And hopefully it will give you the experience where you'll want to keep doing it. That's the aim.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. It's like practice makes perfection, right? It's like when you want to be more healthy, you have to practice you can't run a marathon at the first time, right? You have to try more and more. Yeah, you're correct.
Exactly.
So please try 2 minutes first time, then 3 minutes 2 weeks ago. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome back.